And welcome to the European Parliament in Brussels for Talking Europe on France 24. 30 years ago, the Schengen Agreement was ratified by European leaders, paving the way for the disappearance of internal border controls within most of the EU. Europeans make over 1.2 billion journeys within the Schengen area every year. Hailed by its supporters as one of the greatest achievements of the EU, the Schengen area comprises 26 countries. That's all the member states expect for Britain, Ireland, Romania, Bulgaria, Cyprus and Croatia. Meanwhile, 4 non-EU states have joined the scheme: Iceland, Norway, Switzerland and Liechtenstein. So, is Schengen really a European success story? As Europe faces rising terrorist threats and illegal immigration, is Schengen part of the solution or part of the problem? Renate Weber, welcome to Talking Europe. You're a Romanian MEP from the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats. Your country is desperate to join the Schengen area, but somehow a number of countries continue to block your application, not least the Netherlands. You'll tell us why. Also with us, PHILIPPE Lamberts. You're the co-chair of the Greens. You come from Belgium, a small country located at the heart of Europe. Now, from Brussels, if you take your car, you can be in France or in the Netherlands in less than an hour without having to show your passport or stop your car. So Belgians, as a rule, I believe, like Schengen. Diane James, you're from the United Kingdom. Your country has refused to join Schengen, and your party, the UK Independence Party, UKIP, is staunchly against Schengen. You'll tell us why. First of all, PHILIPPE Lamberts, as a Belgian, what is your assessment? Has Schengen been a success story for Europeans?
I do believe so, not just as a Belgian, but as a Green. I think that the abolition of internal borders for the most usual situations, so in normal times there's no border controls, is a good thing because, well, the freedom of circulation is one of the major freedoms enjoyed by the European citizens, and Schengen is a way to enable those freedoms to become reality. So yes, as a Belgian and as a Green, I support Schengen and its extension.
Diane James, why do you believe that Britain should never join Schengen?
It's an absolute issue about sovereign control and sovereign control of our borders. I hear what has just been said, but when you look at what Schengen represents, you cannot control, you cannot prevent, and you cannot monitor individuals coming into the Schengen Agreement area. And given the current threats that you outlined and others, that really just isn't acceptable.
Renate Weber, you hear what Diane James just said. Why then is Romania so keen to join?
Well, Romania is keen to join. I'm very keen to join. And during the last mandate, actually, I was the co-rapporteur on the new Schengen governance. And in this capacity, I visited a lot. I spoke with many people responsible with this. And I truly believe that Schengen is the most successful achievement of the European Union, at least for the European citizen, is the most tangible. Of course, we know very well that it's extremely important for businesses as well, but the truth is that citizens feel this more than anybody else. I remember talking with the Polish presidency when they were in charge here, and they said that they really felt they were part of the European Union once they joined the Schengen. And of course the Romanians want to join the Schengen for the same reasons as all the other countries which until now they joined. Moreover, I need to say that technically speaking, we are so well prepared, and the truth is that the equipment we have is much more performant than what other countries have. And in this respect, never has happened anything since 2010, when we joined actually the information capacity of Schengen.
Now, we're going to talk about the very reasons why a number of countries are still reluctant to allow Romania. It has to do, of course, with the control of the external borders. But first, I recently traveled to Schengen. It's a small town in Luxembourg. That's where I met with Luxembourgish MEP Frank Engel. He's from the centre-right European People's Party. We visited the Schengen Museum. That's very close to the place where the treaty was signed 30 years ago. Schengen Agreement signed in 1985 enabled the free movement of people in a Europe without borders, and this museum traces back the history of the Schengen zone.
So it does, from the beginnings in 1985, when the then Luxembourg authorities chose a place which is effectively situated on borders. The German one just across the river, the French one a kilometer or two down the river Moselle that we can contemplate out of the window here. And it was also decided to sign on a boat, meaning that this river crosses frontiers without being impeded. And so with 5, we've grown to 26. Not quite enough yet, because there are a few knocking on the door still, and a few others that don't want to join, but well, those that don't want to, you can't force.
Philippe Lamberts, being in Schengen is like sharing a house. So you want to make sure that the fences around the house are secure.
Yeah.
Is it really the case?
Well, it is as secure as can be, but it's a matter of, well, how much you want to put into erecting hard borders, you know? There's a sort of mentality that is growing in Europe that we should build tall and thick walls to build a fortress Europe. Well, we as Greens do not believe that this is the right way to act, actually, because, well, as high and as deep the walls can be, there will always be people who will find ways to overcome these barriers. We've seen numerous examples at the border between the US and Mexico, the wall between Israel and Palestine. I mean, these examples are not typical of what we want to live in. I mean, the time of the walls and the iron curtains in Europe should be over. I mean, the illusion that, well, any given member state would be able to protect itself against the dangers of the 21st century or to meet the challenges of the 21st century on its own are, I think, well, a bit illusions.
Ms. James, what do you respond?
Well, I don't see the issue here about it being Fortress Europe. This is all about, and let me just start again by saying that the UK doesn't see itself as being part of a sovereign Europe. It sees itself as the United Kingdom being a sovereign nation in its own right, as all of the other member states are. I think we need to just recognise that the Schengen Agreement is 30 years old. It was set up as part of an ideology objective, and quite frankly, 30 years on, is it now fit for purpose, and is it able to react to the challenges that the European continent faces?
What would you like to change?
I would like to see, using the latest technology, the mechanism reinstated where individuals carry a passport or a means of identification, and that is presented at every single country's borders. There is absolutely no reason why that shouldn't happen, and it doesn't need to hinder trade or business or people movement, because technology has moved on to such a degree that we're not looking back to 30 years ago where there was huge queues at borders and such. It's not about that. It's all about reacting to the challenges that now a huge continent without borders represents.
Renate Weber, I saw your reaction. You don't seem to agree. You don't want border controls at every single border.
I don't agree, simply because I am aware, I know what kind of legislation we have been working on during the last mandate, and the truth is that, yes, the most advanced technology is at our disposal and it is in place. And since we changed, because yes, the treaty is old, but last year we actually changed it, the Schengen agreement, because we came with this new governance, and the role of the European Commission on helping the states which may have some difficulties on protecting the European borders, because this is what we are talking about, yeah? The protection of the external borders of the European Union. So now the Commission can act much more efficiently.
I'd like to point something out, is that even as part of the Schengen Agreement, it is always possible for a member state to re-establish border controls in case of, well, you know, national emergencies or threats to national security.
And that's precisely what Germany has just done in the wake to the G7 summit.
So we should not comment the illusion that actually, you know, you do not have means within the Schengen framework to do what is needed. By the way, I would also like to point out that, well, many people used the Paris terrorist attacks earlier this year as an argument to basically destroy Schengen. I just want to say that there was no national border between the home of the Kouachi brothers and the place where they committed their terrorist attacks. So, I mean, this would not have changed anything in terms of France's national security. Had there been a stronger border control regime, I mean, the terrorist attacks would have been committed regardless. So I mean, let's not use excuses to actually step back to a situation where European citizens lose the freedom to basically roam across Europe.
Now, interesting that Britain is a member of the European Union, at least until the referendum. We'll see what happens after that. But it's not in Schengen. You have countries that are not in the EU. I'm thinking of Norway, Iceland, Switzerland. They don't want to be part of the EU, but they're very interested to share their borders with Europe. How do you interpret this?
I'm sure various carrots are being dangled in front of them, and I heard what Mr. Weber said. I think you have to put into perspective that yes, there are instruments that can be invoked in cases of an emergency, but there is a time lag and there is a decision process to make that happen. So it's not as reactive as you might like to indicate with what you've just said. I think the issue still is we have a situation now because of Schengen which is being openly exploited, be it by people trafficking, by counterfeit goods, by fraudulent counterfeit cigarettes, all sorts of issues. Now, when individuals know about those challenges, know what's going on, and put that in contrast to the freedom of movement that supposedly we have, I think that raises a very, very, very clear argument and a very important issue for people. Are they still happy in those member states that their security and their safety is being put at risk because the EU would rather see Schengen continue than necessarily change Schengen or readdress the problems?
You don't believe that our security is being put at risk because of Schengen?
At all. First of all, because, and please allow me to contradict you, I really worked on this new governance, and I know exactly that the countries can react in minutes, not in hours. So it's still the decision of the member states if something happens. But by the way, keep in mind that when Norway was under such a horrible attack, they did not quit Schengen, quite the opposite. They wanted people to understand what a multiculturality is, in fact. So let's not invent motives and then take advantage of the, I don't know, maybe poor lack of knowledge of people simply to scare them. Yeah. People are definitely much more scared about the jobs, the sustainability of their jobs, so we should work in this direction.
And your point of view is that precisely thanks to this borderless scheme, it boosts things like trade, it boosts things like the economy, basically.
Well, it's not just the economy, because, well, there's lots of arguments about how much the economy benefits from free circulation of people. And I don't want to enter that, but to me, it's more about, well, basically freedom, which cannot be quantified, the freedom to circulate, and also a sense of common belonging. It's also, well, lifting these restrictions to travel allow Europeans to see more what they have in common. Because, well, let's look at the globe. I mean, the far end of Europe, where we sit, is 2.2% of the land on this planet. That's a tiny place. And, well, erecting borders within that tiny place makes no sense if you want our 500 million people to be able at least to enjoy a bit their territory. And, well, again, I would guess that if you ask all people what they would want to keep that freedom of circulation. No, again, that is not contradictory with having security standards, which will, of course, never allow 100% safety, but at least decent law enforcement. And again, Schengen is not something that runs against law enforcement. And I hate people trying to dangle, well, you spoke about carrots, but this sort of apparent contradiction between the possibility for member states to enforce law and the existence of border controls.
Diane James, your response.
Well, you know, obviously we're coming at this subject from completely different angles. We've got two people here that represent countries that think a lack of border control, a lack of sovereign country control is a good thing. We have had numerous instances over the last few years in the United Kingdom where citizens from European countries who are totally entitled to come to our country, they have a European passport, we cannot stop them, and they've come with a criminal record, and they've then come to our country and committed other crimes. Now, you know, for an individual, a UK citizen, they read that in the newspaper press, they hear it on the radio, they hear it on, or see it on the TV, and they ask a very big question. why did that individual have the capacity and the ability to come to our country? And the answer is because of the European Union initiatives which support freedom of movement of people. And we're saying, no, wait a minute, we need to look at this, we need to harness it, and we would prefer to see border control in place, proper border control.
Well, but
and it does not need to hinder tourism, economic growth, because, you know, if you take just two big countries, United States and Canada, they exchange data. What is wrong with well in excess of billions of people there moving across a border with none of the problems that my two colleagues here
Very
are
briefly, as we're running out of time.
There is a mixture of concepts here in this explanation, which is not correct. Because if even if you go to the police border to show your ID card or your passport, you never bring with you your criminal record. So it's absolutely nothing to do with being in Schengen. This has to do with visa policy. But UK actually accepted that there is no need for visa for the European citizens. So mixing the notions, it's simply confusing the people.
And what I see is that, well, the UK is probably less suspicious about, well, non-European citizens like Russian oligarchs who have a dubious legal record. Well, but as long as they have the money, they are welcome in the UK. So, I mean, that's also a sort of double
Paris
standard.
Is no different.
Well, I'm sure,
and
but I oppose
Belgium's no
this.
different either. So I don't think you can identify.
But you have to be consistent.
You cannot be that selective. We're talking about ordinary citizens who want to feel that they can move around the European continent, UK included. There's no issue with that. But with a safety valve, a clear safety valve in place with a passport.
But we have that in Schengen.
But with good and decent and appropriate border control, which we don't have.
We'll have to leave it there, I'm afraid, as we're running out of time. But thank you very much, Diane James, Renate Weber and Philippe Lamberts. Now, please stay with us on France 24. I return just after the news break in about 10 minutes on France 24.